Welcome, guys. We're here at Heart to Heart. Our first guest in our first episode, we're really happy to have Logan Hartlaub. Logan, you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
I'm Logan. I'm born and raised in Cumberland, Maryland. I'm an artist, but it wasn't my career for a long time. I wanted to be a field biologist, and I was. I've worked the past 5 years out in California, Oregon, Wyoming, a lot of those western states doing surveys for critters and working for those companies. But I had an injury, so I came back to Cumberland to get rehabilitated. And while I've been back here, I've kind of got to re-know the community I once knew and a lot of new faces and start back in on art, having so much free time on my hands. And it's really taken off, and I've explored a lot of new styles and stuff I never thought I would, and met a lot of great people. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am now. Hopefully I'll get back out into the field soon, but for now I'm really just loving being able to paint. You know, it's been a huge crutch for this time to take my mind off the surgeries and stuff like that. Being able to create some stuff and interact with other artists here and
yeah, sure. It's funny that you refer to it as a crutch, you know, because you're having, knee surgery and you're using your art as a crutch, but I kind of like that. But your art's really great. We really love to see the work around in the area.
Thanks. Yeah, and like crutches, it definitely applies now because it's more important now than it used to be. You know, there's pillars of your life, and you should always have multiple ones so if something breaks. And so my health broke. Still got family and friends, but like I'm relying more on that now. So pillar or crutch, kind of whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, whatever you're leaning on to prop yourself up, for sure.
But yeah, I'm definitely relying on it now as a tool for mental health and for entertaining myself and feeling like I'm still doing something like worthwhile that I want to do now more than at other points, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, I can only imagine personally as an artist how I would feel if like I couldn't get out and do anything. But at the same token, like that's probably all I would do is have a notebook open.
Yeah.
And like, the art supplies literally everywhere next to me on the bed, because like what else are you gonna do? And I would feel like at least I wasn't wasting time. Like I was
and it's an escape, what you're painting is kind of like as art, you can't get sucked into the scene or like whatever you're doing. So sure. I kind of feel like I'm surveying for owls again when I'm painting an owl or something. It's cool. It takes it away for a second into a really happy place.
Yeah,
get out there.
It's definitely an escape. A lot of times, a lot of my art I feel like is work, but at the same time, like I don't think I would be this far down the journey if I wasn't like enjoying myself or at least doing it. And it's important to remind people that like, as an artist, like there are challenges and there's things, but like part of that is the fun of like growing as an artist and like getting over those bridges that you thought you couldn't do or that like were unobtainable, and then watching yourself go over them is such a magical feeling. You know what I mean? I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah, and ones where you didn't think like you'd be able to do that. I haven't painted on like a big canvas for a long time, but like you're saying, like being back here and like I have the time and space to do it, and so you're finally kind of conquering that thing that you didn't have the time or the mindset for. Sure. Now you can get over that hurdle. Special.
Yeah. So we went over a little bit about like where you're from and a little bit of your past, but like, are you originally from Cumberland? Where did you originally start out?
So I was born in Crespatown, basically Cumberland.
Yeah,
I like to think that.
Yeah.
But my family was originally from Colorado, so my oldest sister was born in Colorado, middle sister Michigan, me Cumberland. And then I grew up here all my life. Went to Allegheny, Braddock, and then I went to college at Dickinson, PA. But yeah, so family's from Colorado, and I was lucky enough to go out there every year since I was a kid, and that kind of was the reason I wanted to do biology work out there after school. And part of the reason I started painting, some of my earliest ones were when I worked for the Forest Service, is when I first started painting when I was outside of Cumberland. I worked for the Forest Service in Colorado, so I started painting those mountain scenes and things like that. And then coming back to Cumberland after that, but yeah. Sorry, I got distracted from the question.
No, you're fine. So kind of off of that question, so you did a lot of work in nature and Forest Service, like you said, and I see a lot of birds in your work. I'll have to get some pictures and stuff so we can show them on screen. But I've seen a lot of your work, and it's very nature oriented. And like I said, as an artist that I've studied things myself, you clearly not only know what you're looking at, but you understand the species of bird and like what like the actual information that's involved. And I'm curious, like, did that come from like, were you doing something with work that sparked you to like work artistically, or did you just happen to this is what I do and I'm also interested in art and they kind of just overlapped? Like, how did that end up being like? Because that's a lot of what you do now is nature.
Totally, and that's something that I love to reflect on. As like I've been painting. So when I first started painting here at Allegheny High School, I got into painting up there from a local teacher, like opened up her classroom for us. And I painted some nature stuff, but I was like taking from pictures and, replicating things I saw, which I still do when painting, like getting references for like all the bird paintings I do right now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Going after I went to school for environmental science and like worked out there with some of these species I painted, I definitely wanted to portray them in different ways. Like I had some certain pictures, like I wanted to replicate those because like that's how I saw whatever species it was. And the certain paintings I've done are like in the species chart kind of thing, where it's like, 12 local birds, they're all like, painted on a watercolor piece of paper. And that's the way I've received information through my work or from just a passion of birding, is you kind of have a list and you like try and match it, and then, but some of my other paintings have taken those birds and like we'll put them in like an urban setting, or doing birds like on concrete walls, like my street art around Cumberland. Sure. I like putting this because that's kind of, now I'm reflecting on all the ways I've seen these species, and some of them have been in Cumberland, like in the backyard, or like in an alleyway. I'll see a species I like, or just a species day by day, like a blue jay, and see it in that frame of reference. Or I might be doing one of my fieldwork jobs and I'm out in some pristine wilderness and I'll see that species. Yeah. And the feeling you get from based on the environment that you're in when seeing that species is completely different. And art, I love using art as a way of exploring that difference in what state you're in when you're observing it.
Sure.
So, and sometimes being in Cumberland, I went birding last April and I recorded 38 different birds in 10 minutes. And I was at the old Allegheny High School, like on a street and just in a camp chair with my dog.
Sure.
And so like, even in environments that we think aren't like the way you should be appreciating nature. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes we think you have to be at an overlook or like in a park, but I found that on that street and I was wigging out at 7:30 in the morning. Yeah. From getting a bird I didn't expect to get in Cumberland. Mm-hmm. And those moments are so important, and not everyone's kind of environment of how they interpret nature is different. And so I just like exploring those connections and seeing how it affects how we put it on paper. Yeah. What we see is fascinating and ever evolving.
That's a really interesting way to put that. Especially like your take on like basically how you look at things as like intricately as you do because you have the information. I think it's really interesting to me because it's bred this really interesting character of like an artist. Excuse me. Because you can be like really talented and skilled and like knowledgeable and be able to itemize like everything that you have to hit on like a certain art project. But like yours takes it a step further to like not just like, it's not just a piece of art, it's like informationally correct to you. And I love that because like I approach things with like a theme, but like the bar is made up to me. Like there's not a real bar. Whereas yours is based like almost encyclopedic, like this is what it's supposed to look like. And I really appreciate that. It's almost like you're documenting like what you know about it. And that like, that's important to me because I know we're in the information age and like stuff is everywhere and you can go look up whatever you want on the internet, but it's important that people are still like going out with journals and taking notes and like reading what someone else wrote, like looking at a real subject and like comparing that and contrasting it and making sure that we're still good because things change, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Some things are missed and overlooked. And so like to me, like the way that you approach your art, like itself is, it's a creative process on its own. Outside of like the result is really cool for me to watch. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, and yeah, it's how, because you're gonna react differently. Like my sister a couple weeks ago sent me a photo, and it was a great horned owl. But she lives in the middle of Aurora, which is suburb in Denver, huge suburb in Denver. But so seeing that owl there, even if you're not in the frame of reference that I might be in, but like her seeing it there and her seeing it out in like a forest, her reaction is gonna be different. Oh, because when you see it in the city, something about it is like surprising to you, and that just is going to make your whole experience there different. And seeing like the owl, but there's power lines behind it, or like, and seeing the owl and it's perched on a fence versus perched in a tree, like those all, and then capturing that in a painting is really incredible because you can take these like human elements and a lot of like typical nature paintings, like Bob Ross stuff. He did some stuff with his cabins in it, but a lot of it is, seen in the way where we're not part of the image. And like getting into my career as environmental science is like, are humans part of nature and are we not? Like there's a whole debate about that. And I think we are. It's kind of like, I've explained, there's a meteor analogy where like, is a meteor a natural event on Earth? It is. It's catastrophic.
Sure.
And so humans are kind of like that because our impact is huge, but we still evolve through natural processes and things like that.
Still part of the
working I still machine, like incorporating those into the natural imagery, and some like putting a fence in some of my pieces, or like there's one I have with a big cruise ship in it, but then all these like beautiful birds and stuff flying around, because that's kind of the way we see most people interact with nature now. Yeah. Very few people have the ability or accessibility to go into your backyard and have nothing there, like not an old tire, no Gatorade bottle,
from society.
Like everything.
No,
and
I totally understand. Yeah.
And so kind of like still finding beauty and wonder in those scenarios is important, because that's the only place that most people have to have those experiences, because they don't have. You can't go into the wilderness and be surrounded by it. True. So we still need to preserve that mesmerizing effect that nature and critters have on us, even if it is in an alleyway or a bird perched on a power line, as opposed to.
It's weird that you mentioned that, because like I love nature, but like as crazy as life gets, I forget about nature a lot. And I always get reminded when I have like a good day and I don't have anything to do. And I'm like, I'm going to shoot out to like one of my favorite places. And like Swallow Falls is one of my favorite places to go to. Oh, yeah. And there's something serene, especially if you can catch it on a day when it's not like a holiday and there's not a lot of people there. There's something that you can't put into words or even put into a painting or like explain to somebody. Just the feeling that you get to be around just natural things. And I get there's trails and like there's people with
the water running probably does something to
it does something psychological. And like I know they have sound machines and all this stuff, but like being there, like I have never gone there a single time in my life, and I've probably been there 100 times, where I didn't leave and feel at least a little bit relieved, at least a little bit better than when I got there. And there's something magical about that, and it's important that you have the take that you do, and I appreciate it, because
I'm glad you've had that experience too, like of that place and like getting it out of that. And I there's gonna be people who will go there and even if there's no one there, not get that same takeaway.
Yeah.
And I don't think that someone's to blame for not taking that away, because you don't know if there's the way people are raised now and like everything that's going on. If I completely understand why people don't have the same outlook I have on and environmental conservation and things like that. But I do think it's important in the long run. So I'd like for more people to have that outlook. Yeah. And I think it's a healthy thing just for us to realize that we have to preserve what we have and appreciate things that isn't just based on our opinion of, it's beautiful for us, but also just the sanctity of life as it is without us in it.
Yeah.
But
we are just a small part of this very large planet.
Have you ever been to the Redwoods?
No, I've only been out west once when I was very young and only to like go to Disney, and like I plan to. I have
Disney. That's the opposite of the Redwoods.
Well, I know, but like the only time I've gone west
still
at
beautiful.
All is to go, and I was like 2. My only memory, ironically, is my dad and mom tricking me on going to the Tower of Terror. Shut up, Mom. Yeah, I still remember that, but I was terrified. But like that's like my main memory because I was so young, and like I have other memories, but like I have unfortunately in my life not gotten a real chance to travel. Hopefully in the near future, like I have some plans to move some things around and just kind of break away, because like with what we were just talking about, like you get locked into society and like this game that we play that like is society and like trying to fit in and like have your place and your part. And I can't tell you personally how nice it is. Like people talk about these vacations where they go to these elaborate places with all this architecture and places, and like that's cool. You should see that stuff. It's important to see those things. But there is nothing that beats getting out in the woods for a day and just like putting the phone away, and like you can have tech, you can take pictures, you can do whatever you want, but like to disconnect from society and just to look around and appreciate what's going on around you in like the world outside of what we've created. The world is massively underrated if you start digging out there. There's so many cool things to get into, and So
How do you think we get more people to do you, because I struggle with this a lot of like, and I've read a lot about it, and there's studies that like, how do we get people more engaged with like protection, things like that. Some people think like even seeing like documentaries online, like BBC, Planet Earth, all these documentaries, like that's a good way, and you don't have to be there, but it has an effect on people of like just seeing these, and that's why I don't like drones in natural parks, but drones have enabled us to capture this amazing footage of critters that affects how people see the world, and like and promotes people like donating and like wanting like supporting conservation efforts. So I'd be interested to hear like what do you think that is anything pops out in your mind when you think about like how do we get people to have those moments?
It's hard to convince people to go do things that they don't do every day. And I'm stuck in my ruts. Like humans are habitual creatures, and I'm so much to blame for that. Like we get into our, like I said, like the game that we play every day. We wake up, we go do this, we go do that, we come home, and life's crazy, and you get busy and overwhelmed, and you forget about stuff. And with me personally, like I know that there are 1,000 things out there this week that I'll see that I'll get interested in because I was exposed to it. And I think like just seeing it or just like, hearing about it is not enough. You have to be there. And like the only way I can like encourage it is like there's phrases like, everybody should work in the service industry or be a bartender or, things like that. And I agree with phrases like that, not because like I think you should be subject to like anything that they've been through, but it just gives you perspective. And the only way that you can learn or stand outside of your own shoes is to get outside of your own shoes. Go down a path you haven't gone down. Follow somebody and see what they're doing. Go see a place you haven't seen. Even if it's not something you like doing, just go see what it's about. I promise you, if you just open your eyes a little bit, you'll find something that at least keeps you busy for the day. And when you go out to see nature, for example, like you will learn to appreciate the little things, but you have to let all those distractions like dissolve. If you got your phone in your pocket and, the TV's behind you and, you got music playing and you got a message that just popped up and your phone's viral, like all these distractions, like we don't realize how polluted our attention span is until you set it all aside and you can just sit and breathe for a minute. It's crazy the feeling that I get overwhelmed with. And like, it makes me want to just throw my phone in the river when I'm there. I don't, because obviously we live in a society and we gotta, I'm trying to create art and connect. And like, that's the world that we live in. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, like we've gotten to that, but that doesn't mean that we're glued to that. And we have to like, just like stick to that. And like, if you want inspiration, this is my favorite thing. Go find anybody in your family or friends that has a kid that's between, 4 and 6, and just go stare at them at a tablet and say their name a couple times and watch just how locked in they are. That's enough to scare me to say, I gotta go outside and get some fresh air. Because like, I remember being a kid and like, we played video games. I remember staying up till 2 a.m. with my dad playing Donkey Kong Country 2, and it was one of my favorite memories. But we also went outside the next day and played baseball in the yard. And we played in the grass, and we rode on the swing set, and we had an outdoor fire, and we helped Dad fill the fire. We helped him stack fire. We were not in one place, and I think that's important that like, all these things are great. Like, you like a game that you like, play it. But moderation, you really only get one chance to do all these things. And sure, they're all cool, but you should try as many things as you can get to do. And I think like that's the motivator of like, how do you get people on board to check something out? You got to show it to them. You got to be like, hey,
the sense of exploration too, because you just said like try as many things as you can.
Yeah, so like don't be afraid to try new things. And like I get it, there's rules and limits, and like, well, I'm not gonna do that thing. I get it. Like I used to love jumping 30 foot in the air on a snowboard when I was a kid. I can't do it anymore. I'm scared of heights and my anxiety kills me. I can't do it. But I experienced it. It was awesome. I will never forget that feeling. And like, maybe the time that you're trying something isn't the right time. Maybe, I don't know. But like, don't like just look at something and say, that's just not for me overall. You could be right, but you won't know until you try it. I guarantee you with every single new thing you try, and you'll agree when you really think about it, there are things that you thought about when you thought going into it were gonna be what they were gonna be, and they weren't, or there was more to it. And I can't stress that enough. You can't just let things go because it's like, well, I don't think I'd like that. Like, maybe you would hate that new food, but a bite of it isn't gonna hurt you if somebody offers it to you. It's not gonna kill you. Clearly it didn't kill them. And I think it's okay to try new things and to not like them. You know what I mean? It's okay to pick something up and say, I gave that a go. It just wasn't for me though. And like in my art, I use that as oil painting. I've tried oil painting a dozen times. Did it in school. I've tried.
Oil painting smoked.
It's
terrible.
Hate it. It just takes forever, and it's just there's too. But other people are like, I like that I can take a year on a painting. It's To each their own, but give it a try. Don't.
You can dislike something, but know full well that other people do like
and
it.
that's my take is that like
Yes.
you
But
can't.
when it comes to nature, I don't approve of that.
Nature's good for everybody. You need to go outside to get some vitamin D. I went through
It's a hot take, but that's
a
fine.
harsh period of my life where I stayed in a room and I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't like taking care of myself, and it was a long time ago. But it took me a lot to get out of that. And I tell everybody, I'm like, the first things I look at when I'm having a hard time, I'm like, have you had water? Have you eaten right today? Have you had enough sleep? And then if you've gotten those 3 things and you're still not there, just go outside, go for a walk, get some fresh air, see some nature, some trees, be around something that isn't the busy society that we're in, and you'll feel better. It's natural. It's the way nature is supposed to be. I don't know how else to explain it. Like I said, I can't put it into words well, but you don't know what you're missing until you go see it. And if you go take a walk down a river and your shoes get all muddy and your hands get dry and you're like, you know what, I'd rather go back to my house and play video games. You know what, you go play video games and you have the best time you can have doing that. But at least try it. At least give it a shot, because I'm telling you, even if you don't ever do it again, you will take something from it that will be meaningful, and it will be something that you did in your life that was important. So that's my take. You can't convince or force anybody to do anything, but if I can give you a grain of salt to take with you, it's that you should try some new things. Like you don't know what's going to happen. Like worst case, you hate it. You're going to hate 1,000 things today anyway. Really, like every day has something bad that happens. And like you have to get through it. So maybe try something that you weren't sure about and find something that And I mean, that's how I learned. That's how I get more creative stuff done. So what motivated you to start taking like your artwork and go out and about? Because I know you said you came back to Cumberland and you were kind of like, had knee surgery. There wasn't a lot you could do. You weren't mobile. So like what brought you out of that to not work in like a notebook or on a canvas and to go do it in public? Like what was the motivating factor there?
Yeah. So actually back in high school is when I started going outside. I was doing graffiti, a lot of graffiti letters, stuff I'm not proud of now. But that's how it goes as an artist. Mine are more blemishes for the community. I apologize for that in advance, but most of them have deteriorated by now. So after that brief span in high school, I started trying to do some more like street art pieces, not just lettering, stuff that nature themed, other creative things that were still, I don't know if everyone would love, but that's how art goes. The cops chased us one time. We were painting the wall by Pigs Fly up on this wall, me and Kerrigan Clark, and we were in broad day, and we got some construction vests because we thought that and no one would pay attention to us because we have construction vests on. And we started painting, and Austin Campbell was our lookout. 10 minutes in, we get Austin's like, cops, and they were coming across the bridge, 3 cop cars. We packed up all our shit, all the spray paint cans and stuff, and they were already parked. Started running up the steps, hopped through backyards, got torn on barbed wire fences, and the cops, credit to them, were jumping over fences towards us in the backyard up by the old Allegheny High School. And I didn't want to stop. Kerrigan wanted to stop. He looks at me. He's like, we should stop. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And then we stopped and we started walking towards her. And she was still hopping over fence. She's like, why'd you guys run? That's the first thing he said. And Kerrigan said, you wouldn't understand. That's what he said as our defense. And then we walked with her down to the wall. And we had started painting some colors. And I had painted this like woman's face. And we were going to do this like big mural with a lot of colors, flowers. We didn't know where we were going with it, but we explained it to them, and then they ended up just. I was like, "We'll cover it in white, cover it back up," and they let us off. And after that, I got a little more selective. But after I left, though, I probably didn't do any street pieces for 5 or 6 years, and then come back here. I kind of picked up where I left off, and I'd gotten a lot better about doing some more realism, a lot of critters, a lot of birds. And so on the Allegheny Passage, there's so much old concrete. The CNO side has a lot of stuff that is, I consider still like historical, and it's a national park. So I don't paint anything on the canal side where it's the national park under any of those bridges. But on the Allegheny Passage side, there's, a lot of things that aren't associated with like the locks, and they're just like crumbling. It's all public. Everything I've painted on that I haven't got permission from has been public. Mm-hmm. So still not technically permission, but now I am in an email chain with Ray Morris and the city engineer, and apparently people know what I'm doing, but they think it's tasteful enough. So I kind of got the false green flag. But I started doing that, and then I kept going because people walk by me all the time because I'm painting out there. And I used to try and hide and do it in the rain under bridges. And then I started doing it outside, and then I just didn't get negative feedback. I've only gotten yelled at by one person, and probably 200 or 300 people have passed me and said something. And, you know, more than that have passed me and not said something. But the people who have said something has always been supportive.
Yeah.
It's always been inquisitive, and it's always come from a good place. And so if I got the majority bad reviews, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Sure, yeah.
So it's been nice to be reaffirmed, and I also like take into account what people like to see. And so I do more of that, like, generally, because like I'll paint the stuff if people don't want to see it, like, or like don't get a good reaction from it. I'll paint that in my notebook or do like pieces like that.
Right.
My public art, I do kind of take the reactions I'm getting while I'm out there into account, and decide what I'm going to paint next based off of that.
Sure. I think that's kind of an important thing of why yours is so broadly accepted. I've never heard of a single person like that was like, I don't really like what he's doing. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I was up doing, taking a picture of the one where you did the phone with the outlet on top of Washington Street. And I was up there getting shots, and this woman drove up and she's like, "Are you Logan?" And you could see the glimmer in her eye. And I'm like, I'm not. But I was like, you will see this. And like, she won't be in it. You know, shout out if you see this video. And I appreciate you stopping by, and I'm sure he does too. But everyone's super excited about it. And I joke when I tell people about it, I'm like, technically, in like the grand scheme of things, it is graffiti. Like, it is definitely like in a public space.
No running from that.
There's
graffiti
really
and street art are, but like they're interchangeable.
There's a beauty to it that I think everyone has just accepted, and it's a delicate line, because like as an artist, like I would love to go just take a wall and just slap up something that I felt like I wanted to put up. But you've taken care to make sure that the community is not only accepting, but like appreciative, and that it lines up with, you know, like the bar of like, is it an eyesore, or is it like, is this cool? Is everyone gonna be happy about this? And like, I think that is one of the most beautiful things about it, is that like, you've connected with more people through this, in this, what would technically be a legal and wrong thing. But it's delicate because you do that, but anyone else could do this and not approach it with the same care and fashion that you do, and it would go wrong. And like, even we and Dave were talking about this earlier, that if I went out there and I painted like one of my cool like ink and wash style designs, it doesn't look natural. It doesn't fit the scene, and it stands out. And I would do it that way because I wouldn't want my work to look like your work. You know what I mean? I would want you to have your
And there's a place for
right, but it's not the same
things.
as what you can do. You can get away with a lot because of the very high level of like, you know, realism and like entertainment value that it has on a broad level. You can market it to anyone. There's not a person out there that's going to be like, I think that's offensive, and that's what makes it so cool, I think.
And that's a heartening thing, because most of my stuff is critters, you know. So I love to think that deep down it's something that everyone wants to see. Like, we all want to see more of it, and I think that simple fact is why everyone should just support environmental conservation more. Because like, think about, you know, that's something that is, as you said, it's just like a neutral good. Everyone wants to see, birds like painted, like I've never gotten a sneer from like painting a bird on maybe like you don't want it on your house, but if there's a place for it, and it's like something that you're going to pass in the community, if it brings that joy to you, then like I hope like that kind of ties to like, if I want to see it on a wall, I want to see it flying around.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, like there's art that I do, and you probably have some stuff that's like, you know, maybe it's emotional or it's controversial or it has like, you know, politics, whatever. Every artist does different stuff, but like I do stuff sometimes that like I think's a little too edgy to share. And so I just don't share it. Like, or that's maybe it's deep and personal to me, and that like I really enjoyed it, but like it's not for anybody else. It was for me. And I think that's a hard line to defer as an artist, of like, what can I do that's for me, and what can I do that's for the community?
Yeah.
And I like that yours is like clearly laid out in the sand, and you're like, this is the bar that I have set for myself, and you've maintained it. There's not a single piece that I've seen outside of, you know, like sun deterioration that isn't at the same bar. And again, you know, nature's gonna do what nature's gonna do. You can only do so much. So, but and again, they're still really cool. There's one shot that I took of the snake that's on the platform.
Oh, you like that one?
I tried. It's cool, but like the shot didn't turn out. I'll put it in there just so you guys can see it.
That one's probably hitting.
It's
the sun's probably hitting
faded.
it, so,
yeah. And so like, and I'm not saying you do whatever you want to do, but like that was the only one that
I protected a lot of my stuff with the varnish, that clear coat varnish, but I didn't do it at that time Like I started varnishing them afterwards. That one probably, and even if I varnish them, some of them will get sun faded.
Well,
but I
that
don't
one,
think I varnished that one, and it hits the sun all day long. So
that's what we said. And your mom
yeah.
said a lot of the bikers were staying. Thanks again to Logan's mom for taking me out there. It was
Thanks,
very
Dom.
nice of you.
Homie.
But basically, that spot that we were talking about where it's at, it's like a platform, and I think a lot of bikers, like she said, stop there and sit, and they put their bikes on there, step on it, and like that erosion, it's going to add up. You can see it. Like it adds up a lot faster than the ones on the wall. And like you said, the light on it all day, whereas the ones that are in the shade, you know, they get some light sometimes, but not as much as the one that's like straight in the sun. So,
and that's part of the street art too, and something I'm comfortable with. My mom's not as comfortable with. She always is like,
you can tell she wants it to last.
On the concrete barriers that are blocking the Washington and Cumberland Street Bridge. There's those concrete barriers there. And I painted a lot of stuff on those. I painted a pigeon, you know, a flower in a beer bottle, and then a couple others. But my mom's always like, "Why are you painting on those? Because they're gonna fix the bridges and this concrete block's gonna move." But all of the stuff I've done at some point in the future is not gonna be there.
Right.
And that's something that I kind of find beautiful in a way, because that's in an essence nature reclaiming, you know, a human construction, which I find in its own, especially in Cumberland with so many buildings, crumbling factories, the plastic factory. I love seeing vines growing over stuff and things happening.
It's
so
cool. It's very
that going over my art is kind of poetic in a way of how I see it. And I've never been, I didn't varnish my stuff. My mom was the one who said I should. And I don't want stuff to fade and not look good on walls, but I'm not, the process of it eventually not being there is not something I'm concerned about, because that's just the essence of art. And besides, unless you're going to put it in the Louvre behind 12-inch glass, art's going to be passed around, might increase in value, might decrease in value, might end up in a Goodwill, you know? It might end up, someone might take it out of a frame and throw it away 150 years from now. But that's fine. And that's the process. And that's the process of how humans value what we value. You know, we value everything in a different way, commodities, including art. And so I think I have an easy time accepting that. I wish my mom would have an easy time accepting that, but
I appreciate that.
But it's really nice for her too, because every artist wants their art to be valued,
loved,
appreciated as much as they do.
But, I have a very similar take to where, like, you know, like when we had that fire in my apartment recently, my mom was like, "You better get your paintings," and I'm like, "Well, I painted them. I can paint them again." And like I meant that like from the deepest part of my soul. I'm like, look, I did that once. I can do it again.
That's a crazy take. That's
and like
good.
Every one of those has value in them, even if they're gone. Like they were experienced. I shared them. People saw them. They were up. You know what I mean? They had a life of their own. You know, they're not living creatures, but like they had their own life. But like in that sense, I'm not sentimental, and I do believe, you know, like I'm not super religious and like to each their own, whatever they believe. But I do believe magically we're just space dust floating around, and one day, whether it's 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, you go up the chain as far as you want. Eventually, I'm not even going to be a rememberable thing. All of the history of this planet will be obliterated into little other and they'll end up somewhere else, and something else magical will happen. And like, you know, everyone can believe it when they would believe, but like that gives me some peace in knowing that like no matter what I do, like I can't do anything more than what I'm doing right now. And like I have peace in like the fact that like, if something bad happened, well, it happened. You know, I don't have control over that. All I can do is look at what I got right now and create again. And the reality, especially if I lose some paintings or something like that, is that like I did that once. The worst case is that I do it, they're different, but they're better. You know what I mean? Because I've learned more and I'm further down my path. Or that, you know, maybe I get old and I lose some abilities and I can't do them. They had their time, they had their place. You know, and I think it's important to realize that
the effect of that art, or like anything you do, has upon eternity. We all have a stamp on eternity, and we don't know what it is. I think that comes from art. You don't know what your art changed. If it brightened someone's day, made them do something different, you don't know what cascading effects it has in the future.
Absolutely.
That's part of the reason I love doing the environmental work I do, because I've identified owls that have saved a whole 10 square miles of forest.
That's so cool.
And so that forest exists for 2 more years, the whole forest. Everything in it. Every nest, every critter.
That's
and so
cool.
that, who knows what effect having that forest for 2 more years has had on the earth. Who knows? Who knows if what offspring of the species that, you know, were able to live. Who knows what they did? Who knows if population started again? Like and that's where, like, even though we may die and everyone's gonna die and pass on, and eventually no one's gonna remember you as humans do, but your mark and how you affected the material world is beyond your comprehension, beyond
absolutely.
anyone's comprehension.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just knowing that is like hope. Everyone should live with like, hoping that it did some benefit down the road, and that's all we can work towards. Kind of how I feel.
I do believe that like those little things, like very little things that you do in life, like they seem minute and like just like a passing by, like holding the door for somebody, but like the world works in such weird ways, and like you don't know how exponentially the amount of like that could have changed somebody's day, or like, you know, affected something, or down to like the environment, or a piece of art that you created that you inspired somebody with. And like I can personally attest, like there's artists that I've never met, I never will meet, that are dead, but way down in their path, wherever it was, they did something, and that tiny little something pierced through all the other universe events and somehow made it to me and changed what I was thinking in that moment. And like, it's important to remember that like the tiniest little things have that power to impact and create on a long term. Like you said, past our lives, past, you know, when we're gonna be here, or, you know, the human race. But like, it's funny because like I joke all the time, I say this probably like once every other day, that I'm like, oh yeah, most artists don't get famous till they die. And it's true. It's so true that most artists, they don't make any money off their art until, really good ones, until they're long gone, because they're not out there marketing and like trying to be like, I'm the best artist. They are in their craft and they're honed in experiencing it. And like those people are 1 in 10 billion. And I mean that, 1 in 10 billion. Like that is not like a fake number I made up. I'm like, there's almost 8 billion people on the planet right now. Like maybe one of them is that magical person right now. Like in 100 years, another person. But that's my point. It's like those people are so rare that like.
But think about how many of those. I think that actually the number is more. That might be my hot take, because of some of the reasons.
No,
you're right. That what has survived and what we see is because it was latched onto for whatever reason. You know, maybe like Michelangelo knew someone in Florence. You know, he knew there was the boss in Florence. The boss of Florence back in the 1500s had a bunch of money, and Donatello was a personal sculptor in his house. So a lot of these artists, it's like the big conglomerate. Like he had the power, and that's why
they had to. Yeah.
And so that there's a lot of artists that probably would have had a similar effect of like on you now, if their work would have survived and if we would have lauded it to the high level. So I like to think that there's a lot more than that 1 in 10 billion, but we just don't hear about them because of how things went.
That's, I guess, the point I was trying to get at, and it's a long raveled road to get there. But like that 1 in 10 billion, like they exist everywhere, but like that 1 in 10 billion that actually shines through and like makes history. Like that's like, you could be that person. Like you don't know, you don't have to be some magical creature or some deity or a god to be that person. You just have to do the thing that you're supposed to do, whatever it is, figure it out, find out, follow your path. And it's not like you might like wake up one day and be like, this is the thing I'm supposed to do. You just do what you feel like you're supposed to do. But those little things in every different story, that little tiny needle in the haystack that caused that thing, it could be anything you did. It could be anything any person did. So do what you do and feel confident in doing what you do, because it does add up. Good, bad, whatever, you do have an impact, whether it's small, whether it's big. It's important to remember that you don't just go through life and this is just like, well, nothing happens. Like you do affect other people. You do have an impact, and like everything you do, your art, the way you talk, you know, the things you do for other people, the places you go, all of those experiences add up and correlate into like the giant thing that is this experience that we're all in. And it's just, don't forget about it, you know, just don't get wrapped up in what you're doing and think like, well, this is it forever. Experience some new things, like we were saying earlier. Do something different, like try it. But
oh yeah, man.
So what makes art important to you in your life?
Ooh, wasn't prepared for that question.
I know.
I mean, art is kind of the way that we express feelings, is kind of how I think, besides not to get too sappy. I mean, but saying that, you know, people can create phones and computers because they want to connect. I guess that's like a feeling. But art, like including like the poetry, music, things like that, is just, you know, these are mediums that we've developed that just, I don't know, they do something else with the reactions we get, and they come purely from humans, you know, like with communication, we make phones, but like animals like call to each other, you know, and birds have calls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we're like the only species that makes art. And the impacts it'll have, you know, like that it's funny, like the Michelangelo and the Mona Lisa, that something can like connect so many people together is really fascinating. And, you know, I've never made like art to like reach a huge audience. Has never been like my goal. But at some point it's kind of cool because like doing it along the trail where like a couple million people bike every year now.
Yeah.
Like
There's
do the
a lot
whole
of movement
thing.
down there, yeah.
So it's neat knowing that like, you know, people saw it like on their troop through, and just having those like that the little spider web of like reactions that ties people to each other, but through art by knowing the same poem, same book, or like have seen the same art piece is really neat. And, you know, how it can like change your mood too, you know, like sometimes like if I'm feeling down, I'll go into my room and just like look at some of my pieces of it, like, oh, that was cool. You know, just going a little troop through. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer that because it's kind of ingrained.
It's a vague question too.
And I feel like it's affected how I like look at the world too, and things like that. Where like, you know, I do art in the way of like painting like a bird, but like when I watch like BBC Planet Earth, I'm like, that's art too. You know, like taking like people like getting all this footage and stuff and like seeing that.
That's their craft. Yeah. That's what they do. Videography is getting fun for me too, especially like with these little projects and things that we're doing, because like as a painter, there's a goal. Like there's an image in your head that you're going for, and as an artist, I'm sure you relate to this. It's hard to reach that bar that you have for yourself. And like, even when everyone else is super excited and like, wow, that's really good, like a lot of the times you're still not hitting that bar. And I personally have been enjoying cinematography because like, it's nice to like imagine, okay, this is kind of what I think it's gonna look like. This is how we're gonna get there. You put all the pieces together, put it all in one bag, and at the end, you're sitting there watching it like come out and you're like, this is what I wanted. Like, I really got what I was aiming for. And like, I think artists of all different kinds can appreciate that feeling. Whether you're sewing things, or you paint, or, you know, you make music. There's like, it's such a magical feeling to feel something in your head and like feel passionate about it. But then to work through the hours and do the trials and tribulations to find the methods and the techniques to get it to where you want it, and to bring it out of your head onto whatever medium you're trying to create, and to be able to show it to somebody, be like, this is what I was trying to tell you.
Yeah.
This is the thing that was in my head. And like, I cannot, like, I mean, that's art. You can't put it into words. That really is what art is to me, is to take something that you can't just like write down on a piece of paper or explain in a paragraph or like write down in a book, to bring something way past that. It's a similar feeling to like when I go walk in nature. Like, you can't replace that type of thing to me. But it's cool that you address that it's like emotional, because like I want my art to be emotional too, but like there was a long time where I didn't feel confident enough to accomplish things, where I'm like, well, I can do this, I can do that, but it's not as good as it could be, and it's not gonna represent what I want because I'm not good enough yet. But the journey's been very beautiful to like watch myself bloom out and like learn new things and techniques. And I'm sure you can relate. Every time you do a new piece, you learn something new and you're like, all right, like a little more confidence grows off that. And eventually you got this real thick skin when you go into something like, yeah, okay, like, sure, that might not work out, but we'll get there. And I bet you can relate to that too.
Totally. Yeah, and I think from what you said, it just made me think one of the other ways that art's unique in a lot of ways is it allows us to create imagery that we wouldn't normally see.
Yeah.
You know, because we're surrounded by things that, you know, happen daily, and things might be different little details, just like waking up in the morning, making coffee, you know, things we're used to, and maybe little details change throughout that. But art's a way of us actually on purpose, you know, like putting, you know, shifting things together, and like things that you wouldn't normally see, like with your two eyes. It allows us to kind of break that barrier of where, like now with CGI, you can do that mechanically. But before CGI, like back in, you know, a couple hundred years ago, the only way that you could formulate and like make these images appear was through painting and creating art. And like without that, you wouldn't have a way of explaining how you felt about something or what idea you had in your head to another person besides putting it there for them to see.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I appreciate that, because like I've been saying this a lot lately. Like 10 years ago, I'd look at something and say like, oh man, I could never do that. And I think a lot of the magic as an artist is it comes out when like you bridge that gap between that phrase and you see something that's inspiring and you go, I wonder how they did that. And it instead is like, instead of standing on an island and looking at another island, you're on this mass and you have to build the bridge to that other mass. And it's this incredible realization of like, I can get there, but like, I have to realize that I'm capable of doing that and commit to it. Down to like, people say, oh, I could never do that. And I look at every person that says that, I said, you could do just what I'm doing. It's, do you want to put in the time? Is this something that means that much to you to go through the trials and tribulations, to learn all of the things and, you know, to fail and fail and fail, to finally get to where you want?
Or,
that's the difference.
In most paintings, I'm sure that you think it's not even like getting to the end of a painting and realizing it's a failure. It's like, I feel like I failed a lot of the times at some point in everything I've painted.
Yeah, along the way, right.
I get to a point in the painting where I'm like, okay, this is kaput. You know, and for some reason, I think like that I've gone to this step, like I can't get past it. But a lot of the times it's just filling in the space that you haven't filled in yet, and the image comes to itself. So it's kind of it's not getting to the end and seeing, oh, it's a failure now, even though that sometimes happens. It's getting through those failures that are going to happen throughout it, or those not even failures, but moments of uncomfortability with the piece where you're just not liking it, but pushing through it, because until a lot of times with painting especially, but I'm sure it happens with a lot of other things, like poets probably write a poem and then like change a line out, you know, maybe absolutely. A week later, or a year later. And so, yeah, with painting, it's just like pushing through those times and be like, some mediums are harder than others, you know, acrylic, like a lot of painting you can paint over. I know oil's pretty flexible, but watercolor is one of those ones where, you know, it's like once that paper, you're not going to be able to cover that over. That's it. Yeah. So it changes through mediums, but a lot of them have flexibility, which even if you get to the point where like you think you might have screwed something up, a lot of times it's salvageable.
You can bend around it.
Sometimes that salvage is like important in like where it ends up. Like, you know, and sometimes as I've painted more, you get more prepared for those moments. Yeah. And you know that they're gonna come. You know, like I know that it's gonna look like this. It's nice to know in the mind, like, all right, this is gonna look bad and I'm ready for it. So when it happens, you're like, all right, it looks bad now, but I'll be able to get through it. Yeah, it's the mental process of putting your emotions and like your personal feelings aside and knowing that like, I've been doing this for a long time. I've worked very hard on my techniques, and I know this feels weird. Just squeeze through the cracks, get to where you're trying to go. You'll turn around and realize it wasn't that bad. It's part of the craft. Yeah.
And it's like we said earlier, it's part of the process. Like, and a lot of it is the beauty of like seeing something that was like halfway through and you're like, I don't like how this is going. And then all of a sudden you hit a turning point where like you just get that glimmer in the back of your mind where the dopamine kicks and you're like, it's coming out. I really like where this is going. Yeah. You know, and like that's a lot of the magic for me. I love when I see a piece that I've been working on that I'm not sure, I'm not confident about, and then it starts to pop off the paper and I'm like, yeah, that's
What's the longest you've ever worked on a piece?
I worked on this portrait sketch back when I was in school. That wasn't for school, but I did it because I was learning other things and I was trying to go apply.
What was it, a portrait of a person?
It was a portrait of a girl that I was dating. And actually, I broke up with the girl and continued to finish it. It wasn't.
That's a testament.
It wasn't. Yeah, and like I even told myself I was like, I wasn't very like emotionally attached to that relationship or anything. But it was like I'm gonna finish this because like I was like. The artist process of like, I have to commit to this, even if it turns out awful. And I gave it to her. Like I told her, I was like, hey, I was working on this when we were together. Like it'd be a shame for you not to have it. Here you go. And she loved it. You know what I mean? Like we went our separate ways. But it was like a year and a half of like, I don't like how that looks. I go back to the phrase from Napoleon Dynamite where he goes, I spent about 2 hours on the shading on the upper lip. And I think it's so funny because that's real as someone who is learning art. That's not like that's just a funny thing. Like every real artist went through that where they did something and they're like, oh God, that looks awful. And they go back and do it again and again and again. And eventually, and same with Napoleon Dynamite, eventually he had to give up and move on to another feature and say, yeah, I spent a lot of time on that. And you're looking at it and like, it doesn't look that great. Every artist went through that. Even the best, even the most talented people, whether it was when they were 6 or whether they were 25, they went through that. And it's important, I think, like to understand that you're human and that you have to work through that. Just like a hike, you can't stand at the bottom of the hill and imagine, wow, it looks beautiful up there and be there. you gotta hike it. You gotta go through the path. You gotta climb up the rocks. You gotta pull some roots out and fall a little bit. You gotta get some dirt on your clothes. You gotta fail. And once you've done that, that victory feels so much better. If you took me from the bottom and just took me up on a clothesline and dropped me off, yeah, I'll take a picture, it'll be cool. But I won't have that journey. And the mistakes and the failure is very much more meaningful than anything else to me personally. I get excited now to fail. And you could have never told me that was a thing when I was 20, that you'd be like, yeah, you're gonna fail and you're gonna love it. Like this video project, we've messed up so many things that I get home and I'm like, well, that didn't work. What are we gonna do with that? But I figured out, you know what I mean? I cross the T's and I dot the I's, and if it doesn't turn out 100%, we go with 85%, we send it and we aim for 100 next time. And that's the goal as an artist, is just to be better next time.
I've never done something that's 100%.
No, and
I've never done anything I'm 100% happy with.
It's so true.
There's always gonna be some little detail that I would have liked to do better in any of my pieces. But, you know, that's something, you know, I feel like getting hung up on that is what might cause a lot of people to stop their journeys with any craft, is like getting caught up on those things.
To understand that you're not gonna get it every time. And that like a lot of time you're gonna fuck up and it's gonna be wrong. Like it's just gonna be wrong. And
especially when doing anything with realism or trying to do an image that we know that's not abstract, it's gonna...
The bar is very high, This goes back to something one of my professors told me when I went to school, and I have it framed in my house somewhere, or in the apartment somewhere in a box. But it literally, I had A's for the first year of my degree, and I was so proud of myself because like I was not a good scorer, and like I was all over the place in high school. So like for me to get A's for a year straight in college was a massive deal, just to me. Just like that I could do that. And I had this personal observational drawing class, and the first course, it's like a 2-week thing, and I got a bad score, and I was like, it was like a high B, but a B. And I was like, I gotta get this taken care of, because if I don't score really high A's for the rest of the semester, I'm gonna lose my 4.0. And like that really like weighed on me. And so I sent the professor an email. I said, hey, listen, like I don't want you to change my grade. I'm totally accepting with what I got, but I'm aiming high, and I want this A. And I said, what can I do? Because I feel like, I aimed really well on this, that I hit all the points, and, through the reviews and critiques that I worked well through those. And like I said, I'll never forget this. I got the email framed in my house. I got a 1-sentence email, and it said, perfect grades are for perfect work, and perfect work doesn't exist.
Boom.
And I literally, it killed me for a day. I was like, dude, like, how am I supposed to fix this if you're not gonna work with me? Like, you can't just give me an ultimatum like that. And like, after a day or two, it sat with me that I'm like, no, he's right. Like, and no matter how hard I work through this degree, and 10 years into my career, like, I thought more and more about this like statement, and I'm like, it's never gonna be good enough. I will die not being good enough. Me and you will both die not being good enough for ourselves. Like, because we're artists and that's how we are. Everyone else will be satisfied and super excited about everything we do to a certain extent. And it's hard to level. Maybe not. But it's hard to level that reality of like, this is how good I think I am, and this is how good I actually am. It's really hard to calibrate that as an artist and like get on a level where you can be confident with what you're doing and also feel comfortable doing what you're doing. And I think it's taken me like over 10 years to get there. I feel good now, and it's still not perfect, but like that is the biggest bar as an artist, is understanding that like you are not perfect. No artist is perfect. You're never gonna be perfect. And the goal is to get better, but you're never gonna get good enough. Like it's like, that's the path. The path never ends.
The goal is to get better, as long as better means happy.
Right, and if it frustrates you, don't do it. It's not for you.
I'm painting is because it's bringing me joy.
Yeah,
so if you're gonna do art and always be upset at the outcome, then I do think it might not be a process you might want to go down.
Yeah, but maybe not your outlet. Yeah,
but I think it's a lot about frame of mind. Like how you're thinking of it is, and going in with realistic expectations, and as long as, if you're not, and you can do art and just not share it ever and be a great artist and just do it for yourself, So, and I think that you have to do that before you do art for other people. You got to be juiced on your own stuff.
Absolutely.
And be, you can always room for improvement, but you got to be, doing it and enjoying it and continuing to do it,
Yeah. It definitely isn't something that can be forced. And I have to tell people this all the time. I have 3 commissions at the house right now that I just can't work on. And they're like, well, like, I've seen you posted some stuff. And I'm like, I'm just not in the environment to take on something like that ambitious right now. And it's like, I know confidently that I have the skills and that I'm capable of doing it. I just don't feel capable that the result's going to be what I want right now.
Is it because you don't necessarily want to like do it right now because it's not something that you're creating? Because I have that roadblock.
It's my
personally
environment
with, like,
right now. I have a lot of distractions, and this is no dig at everybody. You know, like I have my apartment. Yeah, I'm not in my apartment. I'm staying with family, and like you can understand if you're not in your space, it's very hard to create. Like the odd sound or somebody walking in. You know what I mean? Like it throws you off, and it like you think about something or you get asked a question, and it takes you out of your creative process. And it's very hard for me to commit to something that I know I'm going to do for 6 hours when that's probably going to happen 3 or 4 times. You know what I mean? And I know that. It's not like I'm upset about it. It's just like the reality is I can't do this. So I'm a little anxious and I'm trying to get back to my space, et cetera, et cetera. But like, it's at the same token, it is what it is. It will work itself out. Now I go to the coffee shop like every other day and I sit down, you know, I pull out the notebooks, sometimes I pull out the camera and nobody's gonna bother me and I'm in my zone. Like nobody's gonna bother me there.
I've done a lot of good work at libraries.
And people say
because libraries
that, like,
are, you know, it's
quiet,
there's
it's
a gentle
clean.
hum in the background.
There's just enough
people
of
stamping
that,
books, and I'm just like zoned in. And I've painted a lot of libraries, no acrylic stuff, watercolor.
Yeah, well, I do ink work and stuff too.
But good spot for it.
Yeah, well, it's I was down here at the bar next door a couple weeks back, maybe a couple months back, and the girl was like, "Do you want, like, we have a quieter spot back in the back?" I was like, "Sweetie, I would not park myself at the middle of the bar on a Friday if I didn't want the noise." And she's like, "Really? That doesn't bother you?" I was like, "I like it. It blends out all the background and all noises together, and all of a sudden, like, I'm able to focus because there's so much going on around me that I got a little bubble, and this is my bubble, and I'm not worried about anything outside of it. As long as I got my drink here and my notebook, I'm fine. And I'm not like creating some like world-renowned work of art. That's me time. Yeah. That's me. I'm just sitting and doodling in my notebook and having a good time. But everyone's different. Some people can't handle being around other people when they're processed. Some people want other people around. I'm back and forth. If it's something that like family and stuff, it's a lot. You know what I mean? Like it can make me anxious because there's a lot of playing factors when you're around family. But when I'm like sitting down at the shop at Dave's, whatever, dude. Someone wants to ask me about my artwork, great. Here's a business card, let's chat for a couple minutes, I'm gonna keep working. You know, like it doesn't bother me. It's weird that it's like that, but like everyone has spaces that they can and can't work in. And I think it's important to like recognize that too, that like, yeah, I don't do my best work here right now. So like, I'm just not gonna do that. And so like I've told my commission people, I'm like, until I have like my studio space back, like I don't think I can reach the bar that I have for myself. So, you know, as long as you're patient. And like sometimes they're not, sometimes I'm like, cool, if you want it this week, we'll rush it out. And, you know, I'll just put it in the back of my head that it wasn't my best work, you know. You get 2 out of 3 of, you know, you get fast, you get cheap, you get quality. You know, when they go with I need it now, well, quality's gonna go down a little bit, sorry about that, you know. Or I can charge you.
Yeah,
I can invest my whole life into it for a week, you know. But you
know, I don't do commissions. Man.
It's a tough game. It really, and I don't do a lot of them. I like to sell originals because I feel more creatively free. But
I'll do commissions if it's a bird.
Well, and
I always want to paint a bird.
I like doing animals, and people like. I just had a guy ask me earlier. He's like, "Do you do portraits?" And I was like, "I don't do portraits." And I was like, "Maybe one day." And he's like, "What about animals?" It's like, "I'll do animals. Any animal. I don't care. I love doing animals. I love fur texture. Like I love that. But like the bar isn't as high with it, like a portrait of an animal, where the bar with like a person, like you've seen that person for X amount of years, you know every detail of their face, like whether you realize it or not.
Some people feel that way about pets though. You know?
Well, and that's true, but I don't know. I feel like, and I tell people, I'm
There's
like,
a little more wiggle room with
Here's
pets,
the other thing is when somebody wants a portrait of one person, they usually have 2 or 3 pictures of that person. When you say you want a portrait of your pet, send me every picture you got of that pet. You're getting 100 pictures of that pet. So I can
I like that because you can pick whatever picture you want.
Right, I can use
a nice thing at least.
And then if the lighting's off, I can use other ones and compare and say, okay, cool, this little white dot's here, and when they move this way, it looks. So I can creative freedom. You know, it comes back when you have those. So how long do you typically spend on a piece of art? Like whether it's watercolor, acrylic, like what's a normal time frame for you?
Normal time frame, it's pretty short probably. Combined 3 hours. I guess I think that's short. Some people might think that's long, but the most I've ever spent is probably about 40 hours combined in some acrylic things. But mostly it's in the 3 hour range. My street pieces of all of them have been done usually within the day. I think I've only spent more than a day on one of them. So street pieces have always been sub 5 hours mostly. That phone one that you saw?
Yeah.
That took about 2 hours probably.
That sounds good.
Which is, it surprises my a lot of people are like, can't get their head around how it took only 2 hours. But the nice thing about working outside on concrete is that they kind of, because they're not on a canvas, I think they all look a little better because people aren't expecting them to be amazing.
Yeah.
You know, wow. So it's nice because I think you have a little more leeway in terms of trying to get a realistic image. Because,
Sure.
And so yeah, I think it's just something subconsciously in our minds that we're more flexible when it's like out on like a piece of concrete with some trees behind it. It's
The
like,
par is way higher for a canvas. No, I get that.
Yeah, on canvas in like a store where you're going to be critiquing it a little differently.
Sure.
So usually in that reference, and if it gets longer than that, like even the 40-hour ones I've done have been pieces where I actually combine a lot of different imagery. So it'll usually be still into chunks of like 3 hours, me working on one image in that big piece, doing that image, and then being done with it and moving on to another image in the piece and finishing that.
Yeah.
And so I've, on my bigger pieces, I've like taped off sections and then like we'll paint in a taped section and then be done with it, retape another section and then go in with that one. So it's a nice way of like doing it up. So, cause like some pieces that people have done with it, which are like 1,000 hours plus.
Yeah.
Is something that I still can't wrap my head around. I don't have the patience for that yet. I think, and as we talked about earlier, like patience is something you need in a lot of, and depending on the size of the project, and like you can work on bigger things. The bigger your patience is, the more potential you have to work on some things that are, you know, more in depth, more detail, things like that. Mm-hmm. But I know my bar is right about, 40 hours, like at the most. So, but it's kept increasing as I've been paying more and more. It's like now I realize I can work on something for longer and longer and get less frustrated. So who knows? Maybe I'll get above 100 hours on like one piece. That'd be
graduate
exciting.
to the bigger stuff. I feel very similar that like everybody's like, wow, watercolor is so difficult. And like I couldn't approach it because like it's one and done. And I'm like, that's my favorite part is that like I throw myself at it and whatever happens, happens. And I can't change it. Like I can't go back. Whereas like when I do acrylic, I sit it up on a canvas and I stare at it for a month. And I'm like, I get overwhelmed because I'm like, there's so many things I could change. I can go over, I can do this. You gotta remix colors, et cetera, et cetera. And oil's like, tenfold that. Like the bridge to get across there.
Oil is actually easier because you can blend it.
Well, right, but either one of those.
You can cover it in plastic and come to it 2 weeks later and you can still be blending.
Right, move stuff around, right.
So I've always been envious of oil painters because of the flexibility. While acrylic, as you said, acrylics, if it's a minute, it won't reblend.
Yeah,
like
and
if you're trying to make a gradient in acrylic, in like a sky, for example, and you need to blend, if you want it to be seamless,
you got to nail it on the first try. Yeah,
immediately and have all the paint set up and not let it dry.
Yep.
And if it starts to partially dry and you try and like reblend it, it'll get like chalky.
Smudges and chunks.
Have all those little like pixelated pieces.
Yep.
So it's a frustrating medium. That's why oil is actually kind of like a lot of fine art's done in oil, but it's done because of that. Because it is forgiving in that aspect. Right. Not to diss on any oil painters, but I've always I like acrylics because I get brighter colors from it, and it's just easier cleaning wise. Because I always do it like painting. Oil is dirty.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Like for cleanup wise, and I don't want to have to worry about like moving to painting and it's a week later and it smudges something. I'm like, fuck. Yes. But acrylic is just easy because I know it's dried. It's fine. But it's technically, I think it's more challenging.
Yeah.
When doing things that you need to have color mixing. Yeah. And for skies, some kinds of fur, I think it's really tough too.
I always have trouble when I have one blue sky and I have to remix a blue and I'm like, I have to patch up one little spot and
it's like, that's never gonna
exactly
look right.
Yeah, it just never looks right.
You might as well just do the whole sky.
Yeah, no, I do. I usually end up just doing the whole sky.
That's why watercolor in my mind is the most tough because acrylic, you can do it a little more, but like my tier of like difficult, like for at least if I'm just doing watercolor, acrylic, and oil, oil is easiest, acrylic, and then watercolor is the toughest, at least for me personally.
I pretty much agree.
That's the tier.
I think I like consider myself an artistic masochist in that way because like as people are like, I can't believe that you like watercolor like over all mediums, and I'm like, I like that I can't like. I have to fail. I have to go through like the trials and tribulations. And like, I think with oil, it's almost a crutch in a way because like, oh, I don't like how that turned out of the strokes. I'll just fix it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with watercolor, when you fail, like your fails are there. It's on the page. Like they're not going anywhere. Like I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of failures. And like where with oil, you don't see that because people will just, well, I don't like that. I'll fix it. And say with acrylic, well, I'll just go over that. Whereas like if you can sit down with a fresh page and somebody can watch you come up with something on watercolor, like it is pretty impressive because like you don't get to go back. Like and ink's the same way. Like when you're like doing that outline and you like bump and it goes like a millimeter out, you're like, it's supposed to be white there. What do I do? And so you have to find some creative way to make that work. And like that, it is much more tedious to hit that bar, especially in ink. Watercolor, I don't fear so much because, well, I use schmink, and you can kind of warp schmink a little bit and rework it a little bit. So you can get away with some stuff with schmink, but it's expensive. You got to pay, $80 to $100 just to get yourself a set of those. So it's a hard.
I've never even heard of schmink.
Schmink is they're more grainy, I would say. Like Winsor & Newton is my go-to if I'm picking anything, but once Winsor & Newton's dry, it's it. But with schmink, if I put like a heavy saturation of color and I don't like how much is on there, I can get some of it back off, which I kind of like. And you can't do that. You also have to have good paper. If you have cheap paper, it'll just, it'll tear up the paper and then you'll notice it. So it's, as you know, every brand and every medium, every tool, are just a little bit different.
Every rose has its thorns.
Yeah, and that's a great phrase to that. But it is, as an artist, is the challenge to like learn the difference between everyone and find, not only what works for you, but what works in each situation. And like, so like, do I have 7 sets of watercolor? Do I use them all? No, I use about 3 of them. But like, I do vary between the 3 for different projects because they do function different ways and do different things. So, and I'm sure, you have the same thing with like different paints, Some do different things, some a certain way, some change colors more. So it's a process, but. So do you have any formal training background or like education in art whatsoever? Like I know you said you did something with the Forest Service outside of that and you had an education. I assume it's with that and not with art. So have you had any like formal training?
No, formal training, no. So I took my high school art classes as I did, and then I went to liberal arts college. So in liberal arts college, you need to take everything. I took a gym class. I took 3 gym classes in college. Funny. I took soccer and a couple others, but so in they made you do an art class in liberal arts college. So I did drawing for 1 semester, and I did ceramics for. I passed some AP tests, so I had a free semester. So I was like, I want to take ceramics. Sure. Might as well. School's gonna pay for it. I got to make a bunch of cool pottery. But no, besides that one drawing class in college, which wasn't even like, for an art degree, it was self-taught, just replicating stuff. I definitely learned from a lot of artists I was around, like Kerrigan.
Sure.
And Mrs. Shade, shout out Miss Shade, Allegheny High School arts teacher for a long time.
Oh,
she's
so
great.
Miss Shade, yep, she's great.
She's the reason that I started painting, like, and not doodling, was Miss Shade, because she let us into her class, and me and Kerrigan's he has his master's in fine art, and he's a professional artist now. But we were in yearbook and had yearbook for 2.5 hours. It was kind of a goof off class senior year, and so it was like 1 or 2 days of work for the entire year. You had to go get yearbook ads. So we went to businesses. But when we weren't doing that, we were in the school creating havoc. And so one day we meandered up to the art room. She let us in, gave us canvases. We started painting, and we ended up loving it. That's why we started doing the graffiti. And then that's why Kerrigan went to school and got his master's in fine art. And that's why I kept like painting. So I give her a lot of credit for inspiring that. But no, it's self-taught in a lot of ways. And I think part of the reason, like the critters, at least like birds and like natural imagery, why I can replicate is part just time and trial, things like that. But it's being exposed to a lot of that imagery throughout my life too. I haven't just seen it in pictures. I've had the privilege of actually, working outside and like seeing birds and seeing all these things. So I feel like that has definitely helped my, ability to, create the imagery on the canvas.
No, I can definitely see that. Especially in your work, you can see the details that like not only like are they well done and like great artwork, but like the details are correct. It's accurate. And I like a lot of times that's important because like I don't do anything like that. Like I'll use a photo and like maybe it'll be accurate to that photo, but like if somebody said, "Hey, what kind of?"
I use photos too, so don't.
Well, no, I agree, but like you do your research, and like somebody like I've had landscapes that I've painted that are like, "So where is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." I'm like, I just found some picture on Pinterest that I thought was cool, and I did a landscape like it, and I added my own little features. I'm like, but I don't know where this is. Like, I have no idea. I did one at Yosemite and didn't know it was Yosemite for like a year. Yeah, and like, so like,
I know that one.
Yeah, and it's great. It's a great painting.
It's El Capitan is the name of the wall.
Yeah,
it's the wall. It's El Capitan.
We've looked at it together, but like, I'm not always like super like excited about what I'm painting. I'm more excited about painting. And like to like, oh, I saw this cool color or this like cool thing, and like I want to bring that to like myself. And so it's interesting for me, like my approach, because like I'll meet people like in your sense that like super itemized, you know everything there is to know, like to an extent about like your subject, and I'm just like, people are like, oh wow, you must know everything you know about this. Is so good, and I'm like, I don't know, I just doing my paper, I don't know.
And I started that way too. I think a lot of artists start that way, and. As far as like as the critters go, it definitely became a way of me. I cataloged what I've seen through painting. That's like one of the big ways that I've used it. Is just one of my artistic goals is to paint every bird I've ever seen. Yeah. Not everyone individually, or I'd be painting 100,000 house sparrows. Yeah, you never get to. But I want to paint every species of bird I've ever seen. I'm at like 170 species of birds I've painted.
Crazy.
But I've seen over 500. You know, and all around the world. So it's a way of me of like, you know, codifying that. And as a way of like, you can use painting and art to kind of put feelings on paper or into words. Sure. You know, things like that. Experiences. I use it as like in the frame of reference of me, like in my love for, you know, the natural world and critters, to kind of reflect on those memories I've had of places I've been or animals I've seen, and like that's one of the reasons I paint, is to like give homage to those moments, and have them there on painting, and let like however I choose to display them, which is usually with photo, like realism, and then I can kind of take those with me and have those paintings and have prints of them into the future. Yeah. And every time I see one of my paintings, it's nice because most of them are like, all of my ones with animals, I haven't painted any animal I've never seen. That's one of my other rules. I only paint things I've seen. That's cool. Not landscapes, but critters. I only paint ones I've seen. And so it's nice because like, especially when I can like stand back and look at my whole collection, it makes me, it's like a life well lived. That's the kind of feeling I get from it. So it gives me a lot of satisfaction. And it's a take that I'm sure a lot of artists have, like they like looking at the whole collection of work. Yeah. Like what's meant to you. And what mine means to me is definitely like on a grounds of, it makes me feel so appreciative of like that I've gotten the chance to see all these critters, and shout out to binoculars, because that's one of the reasons. There's so many birds I wouldn't have been able to identify if I didn't have I have a nice set of binoculars. So a lot of times you're like, what is that? And I like knowing what it is. Yeah. That's part of the for my job, I have to be able to identify owls, songbirds. Like I have to identify them for sure, because we're not protecting these forests if it's like a different kind of owl. So I need to know. Right. And so part of it is influenced by that. Like that's like why I need to know like what I'm seeing, like plants, and it goes beyond birds too sometimes. But it's funny to see that reflected in like the artwork I do, and like why I portray things the way I do is because I want to be recognizable, because that's how I have had to be like with my job, right, and also with how I kind of appreciate and catalog in my mind.
That's cool. That actually leads me into our next question really well. So, and this is not one that I've ever asked anyone else. I found this a while back in a conversation, and it really intrigued me. So as an artist, do you think it's more important the idea or emotion or whatever you're trying to portray, do you think that is more important, or do you think the viewer's interpretation is more important? Because there's a lot of art out there, and a lot of stuff is made just like, I make stuff on a whim and I just throw it out there because it means something to me. And I kind of wonder, because I can't stand in someone else's shoes, and neither can you, what somebody else takes from it. Like, what do they see? What emotions do they feel? What does it remind them of? And like, I sometimes stand back to myself, and like that interview that I watched was really cool for me because like it made me stand back and say like, yeah, like I have a perspective, and like this is my goal and what I'm aiming for, and like, but outside of that, no matter what I do, there will be other perspectives on my artwork. There will be a different view, and so like as an artist, do you think how other people view your art is more important, or how you like frame your art is more important?
Yeah, I've struggled with that question from being back home and from doing my street art and trying to, kind of pacify the community and make them want it like as something they want to have around and see every day. And also having to, because I, can't work because of my injuries. So I've been trying to actually market my stuff too and make it appealing for someone to buy.
Sure.
And thankfully Critters already kind of goes into that theme. But for my upcoming show, like some I paint critters, but for example, I painted like a coyote on this like white piece of paper next to like a trash can overflowing with trash on the sidewalk.
Sure.
And so both those things are recognizable. But what I want to kind of convey is the synanthropic is this term for species that have succeeded because of humans, but aren't domesticated. Mm-hmm. So think rats.
Yeah, raccoons are one I always think of, yeah.
Are pets, so that's not a good example. But yeah, house sparrows, pigeons. There's a lot of species like that. Yeah. Possums to an extent, raccoons.
They live off a lot of trash and stuff, yeah.
They're kind of fascinating to me because they've kind of persevered and adapted with us, but we didn't mean it. And they kind of got this leg up from us, and it's not their fault that now we might consider them as pests or not as beautiful. Mm-hmm. But pigeon, when you look at a pigeon, it's a beautiful bird. If they weren't in cities all the time and they were a rare bird, like an owl or something, and you saw one, you would be, blown away.
The purples and greens,
but we're not right now because
of
that. And so in my artwork, I've incorporated a lot of sparrows and pigeons too, because I like to use them as kind of a metaphor of humans in my work. So I'll have sparrows in there in these nature scenes, and that's kind of like they're kind of the humans of the natural world, like competitive, successful, overbearing, So
sparrows, crows, and ravens are underrated.
Yeah, so I love to use those in my work, and that's something where I did a recent piece, and there's the background's a bunch of house sparrows. They're all the same one, in different flying patterns, but they're all in black and white, like pencil. And then over top of them is a lot of other birds, like goldfinches. A myriad of different species of birds, but they're all done color and acrylic over top. And my dad saw it and he liked it, but he didn't pick up on that. All of them in the back were house sparrows, the same one, and that's kind of the point of the piece, was that in the background of our lives always are the house sparrows. They're just there. When I was in Colombia in the Amazon, house sparrows all around the town I was in the middle of the Amazon. And so there's some, I put those in my pieces, and I hope that gets through. But I also want to like my pieces too, so I don't do just house sparrows, because I wouldn't like that, because I have these biases about those birds too, and what I can combine too. So that's why I like pairing them with, these beautiful like tropical birds, or like local ones that we've seen, because it kind of just is like, that's why I want to paint. But the other ones are always present, these synanthropic species, and they're always in the background. And that's the world we've kind of created, and we have to reckon with that. And I kind of like putting them in my art because it's just kind of a reminder of that.
Yeah.
But that, so I have the advantage of doing those pieces though, is because they're still marketable, because usually they're not just that. So I think that some people catch up on that, those subtleties, but not everyone, but I don't expect everyone to, because I can identify. I went to school for it. It's my job to identify birds.
Yeah, right.
So there's certain things but it's nice to create pieces that people can like, even if they don't, get those things behind it.
Sure. Still, visually pleasing.
Yeah. But I try and do a balance though. For sure, between, because you have to like creating things. And, I want to. Sometimes those messages are just majority received by me. But some of my stuff is just like replicating a beautiful bird I've seen, and there's nothing behind it besides just like the capturing an image of a nice bird.
Sure.
But the ones where I am trying to push something else is it's for me and but a lot of it thankfully can be appreciated even if that might not come through every time.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think that question's a good one to ask because I think it's something that as artists you mill around about, like vaguely in context of like, I like this.
And it's hard to know exactly why you're painting something, especially when if you're even contemplating selling it.
Right.
I feel like it's not going to be 100% what you wanted to paint.
Right, because
at any point.
there's like a professional goal.
Yeah, once that bleeds into your creative process, it's going to be hard to associate what with what.
It's funny you say bleed into it because that's an excellent way to look at that because I feel like a lot of the way like the creative process it's like a lot of liquids together and I feel like that specific like I want to create but there is this like overwhelming burden of something else that I have to meet and I think it's that and it does bleed into the process of like I want to create this thing.
I don't know if it's majority if it's bad, good, neutral. I think it's probably all three depending on what piece like it's and that's so it might I think it actually kind of probably has helped art in some instances.
Sure, at least influenced it. Yeah, at least
because it's made different art that wouldn't have been created, which is always kind of a background goal of art is to make new things that we haven't seen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's probably hindered people from doing what they actually want to do. So it kind of does both at the same time. Restricts it and pushes people to make things that they wouldn't have done originally.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a really good take on it. Because I think that's an important one to ask because like I think it's an unasked question that I think as an artist like I think a lot of people just like we go through that battle ourselves. We don't really talk about it. Like I heard it came up in an interview and I'm like that's such a good question.
It's not a good selling point either. If you're trying to sell something, you don't want to tell people like, oh, I was pressured to. I was influenced because I wanted to sell it. Like,
I think
it's not talked about because it's kind of taboo, and it isn't going to help your point because people want artists to be like profound and just them and not paint something just for market appeal.
Sure.
But when you're going to be selling something that's going to bleed into it at some point.
It does
So I think that's part of the reason it's not discussed. Maybe.
I don't know. I guess I ask a lot of the hard.
I want to discuss it. I think it's important to discuss it. I think that might be why people don't talk about like gallery openings.
Because it is a dangerous question in a lot of ways. But like I think like you're exactly right that I think a lot of people avoid it because it feels personal, it feels internal, and it feels like something that you wouldn't want to share with your client. But like as an artist,
and you might not want to admit it to yourself.
Well, that's it. I think it's such a
are influenced and you're paying something you don't have 100% control over. Like,
right, yeah.
It's not coming 100% from you. It's like you're paying it for...
It's uncomfortable. Yeah, that's probably the word I would go with. And I think it's good to touch on that because like I think a lot of artists or a lot of viewers that aren't like, as into art look at artists and they have this imagery of like these flawless people that are super talented. And I think you got to realize that I'll speak for me. I know I make great work and everyone thinks it's awesome, but I'm terrified to show it to some people sometimes. Not like I don't want you to see it, but like I'm terrified if it meets the bar that I have. And I'm sure that you have the same thing where it's like, I don't know if this is what people are expecting from me or if it's what people want from me. And that balance of like, do I care about that? You know what I mean? Like I still have to market it, I still have to sell stuff, I still have to stay alive and eat, but is it affecting the actual goal of my art? Am I making the best thing I can make if I focus on that? And I think a lot of us get stuck on that and like really get like without bringing it out loud because we don't talk about it. We like it gets wrapped up in our heads and it counteractively influences your work in ways that you don't realize. And like so lately I've been like let's bust that bubble. Let's ask the question and like because for me after addressing it, I feel like I can look at stuff and say like okay I know where I'm going with this because I address that, you know what I mean? And so I think it's pretty important and like I said, ever since I heard it, I was like, I'm gonna make sure I incorporate this into whatever I can. Because it's an important topic. As a viewer, you guys probably don't care, but as an artist, I think it's important to know like you appreciate what you're doing and then also that it's meeting that bar. So
yeah. And I mean art is always too is art a lot of the art that we might prize now has been like analyzed, and it was analyzed in part because it was accessible. There's like of that painting I was talking about with the sparrows in the background, you could find what kind of bird that is in the background, and kind of probably be like, oh, maybe he put these here because of this, you know? But that's harder in some other pieces, like some abstract stuff. It's hard to deduce out what the artist meant by it.
Right.
And so like some of it, I think being an artist, like making things accessible and maybe like having to work a little bit as the viewer is healthy and is a fun thing, is an interactive thing in art. But there's an invisible bar, and like, but each viewer is different and they take different things, and like, and as the artist, like maybe some people don't want. In my art, I never want to make something that like I want hidden. Like that's that like bird one is like as far as I go with having like a message in it. You know, it's I feel like I'm never trying to make someone work super hard, and you know, a lot of the themes and the messages I want to get across like come to me as common sense, because it's just mostly about conservation and like reflecting on like why we see beauty, how we see beauty and worth in the natural world, and like through what lenses do we see that, and how our upbringing and like the environment we're around impacts how we perceive it.
Sure, yeah.
And so like, but I think there's a point where it gets so hard to arrive. If you need someone to like have a page describing why they did something some way and like how you're supposed to do it, I think there gets a point for me, just personally in like getting art, where I kind of get tired of it. I don't have the patience to like need a huge explanation for
I'm like that.
Why
I'm
things
like that
are.
a lot. Yeah.
But some people do, and so that's one of the things where it's great, because everyone, you know, some people want that challenge, and some people don't. Yeah. You know, and that's why there's still a market for art of all kinds, because everyone's getting something else out of it and wants to go down whatever road they want to.
I think that's the magic, is that everyone has a different, like, not only a different skill set, a different style, but a different goal in what they're trying to do. And like all of those, you know, they definitely overlap and create something different every time. I was saying, I think to you the other day, it's so hard to be original. And like, if you find something that's truly original,
it's almost impossible, I think, to be 100% original. I think it's impossible.
It's very, but like,
influenced by whatever.
Everything. Yeah, we're so wrapped up in a big society.
And you can't pinpoint it, whatever, you know.
We're so subconscious with a lot of things we do. Like, you don't know where a lot of the stuff comes from. And so, like, I think it's important to realize that, like...
But everyone wants to be original.
If you
but it's
feel
also
like it's
the
pretty
impossible
original,
goal. But I think it's something
good about it.
I think it's something fine to strive for. But I think it is that there's some humility in realizing nothing you're ever going to do is 100% original, because everything's socially constructed. We're all we're all just molded by our environment. So
I think that's like an artist.
That goes into the whole free will. Like, some people think we have no free will. Like, free will doesn't exist. Certain philosophers think
that's a whole.
But I think that comes into like, you know, why am I painting what I'm painting? Do I have free will? Do I paint this fox because I want to paint this fox, or did I paint it because my parents like took me on the road trip and I saw a fox when I was 6 and I fell in love with foxes then, and that's why I'm painting it now? Is that free will? Like,
it's such a hard thing to measure out too, because like,
and I'm not agreeing with it, but I think
it's fun to ponder.
It's fun, especially in terms of art, of where originality is a concept and something people are going for.
Sure.
It's fun to think of these questions of like, why are you doing this actually? And like, I think I don't think it's a yes or no free will thing. Yeah. I think it's kind of like a in the middle.
Philosophy's fun, because I think that's why I enjoy philosophy, is because like the questions that you're asking, you won't get a yes or no. It's fun to think about it though. It's fun to try and
you can go back and forth for a long time. I listen to a lot of podcasts about.
I do too. Yeah, we maybe another day we'll do another like deep dive on some philosophical stuff. But I think that'll probably wrap up that question. Do you feel satisfied with where your skills and your talents and techniques in with art, or do you feel like you have a long way to grow? And I mean, it's totally open to your interpretation, but like, how do you feel about like your path in the art world? Like, do you think that you have a ton of growing to do? Do you think you've made it really far? So as in terms of actually applying paint to canvas and getting across the imagery I want to, I actually feel like I'm 95% there. Like, you can always get better. I'm always getting better at painting, acrylic or watercolor. But in terms of that, I'm there. But where I haven't gotten to where I want to is mostly because I have some images that I want to create, but I just haven't had the time to yet. And some of it has been because I want to paint things that people want to see. And, you know, like right now, I've had a lot of this time to paint, and some things I painted because I want to paint them. Sure. But some things I haven't painted because like I'm trying to make money from it at the same time. So those ones is like,
I'm not satisfied that I haven't, like some of these images I had in my head for like 10 years of like a piece, and I still haven't done it. And I've been here for a year and a half, and I've had this time, and like I could have, and I have the money to buy it, but I just haven't taken the time to do that. So it's more of like a, I need to just bite the bullet and like start some of these pieces.
Sure.
But I think some of them is a time thing too, with just knowing it's going to be a long time. And like I previously said, like what 40 hours is the most I've done. Mm-hmm. Some of the ones I have in my head are like, I know it's going to be like 80 hours. I'm like, I think that's part of the reason I'm not starting them. But I'm not satisfied though, because I haven't done it. So I think I need to kick myself in the butt and actually like bite the bullet and start some of those.
Sure. No, but, I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, but thankfully with technical things, like in representing the imagery I want to, and having that transferred to paper or concrete or whatever, I've progressed really far, and I'm 100% photorealism isn't what I'm getting, but that was never 100% the goal. Mm-hmm. Like it's still stylized to a certain degree. I do a lot of Art Deco stuff with like the solid like a solid color and like 3 different gradients of it to shade something.
I love that. Yeah,
and I love doing that. And so even when I do realism, I still find myself like mixing colors and kind of like doing that blocky approach at some parts of the body. And I that's like a style I've really fallen into and loved. And it's nice because you don't like, once you kind of understand that and working with those, it's easier to master than like photorealism, where you could always get more details, because I'm kind of stopping at like a certain amount of detail.
There's a little bar between colors. Yeah,
and then I just need to work on like how you shade it with those, as opposed to adding more detail until like you're going down to a single hair brush.
That's a good take on it. Yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of stuff, and like I don't know how to feel sometimes. Like I feel like I'm good. Like I've developed my skills and I've done a lot, but it's also hard when you see somebody like that Ben Shanklin, the kid that you just talked about up at base camp. He's 18. The photorealism is crazy. Like it catches me off guard, because I'm like and
he's doing people, and not a lot of people paint people anymore.
Like to take that like confidently at that age is a dumbfounding like. I can't even wrap my head around it, because I've been painting, like I like to think professionally, taking it seriously for about 10 to 12 years. Mm-hmm. I still don't feel confident to paint people. And like, so to see somebody at that age to just walk into it and like, sure, I'm sure they have like issues with their confidence and think things aren't right, but like, it's fun for me to look at them and like compare it to me and be like, I don't feel confident about my work, but I know it's good realistically. I don't even know how I would feel to be in those shoes. Like, I don't even feel like I would be in the real world. You know what I mean? Because it's like, what do you compare yourself to? Like, you haven't been around long enough to like have a story or a path, but you're also so far up there.
I think you're discrediting 18-year-olds.
Well, I mean, that's true. That's very true.
When I was 18, I'd been painting for a couple of years, but I feel like you can be developed and have a certain path. But granted, like looking at us now, like where we are in late 20s, definitely we have more to work off of. Oh yeah. When we're trying to like frame like whatever artistic journey and like influences, but I think he could still. I mean, you should ask him. That'd be a great interview.
I've been trying to get a hold of him. Yeah. Maybe it'll happen. That kid, honestly, is probably so busy with so many things. But like, I think I appreciate it, because I'm like, in a way, I'm jealous, but I mean that in the healthiest way possible. I'm like, the things that I could probably be doing now if I was like that far along at 18. And like, I can't stress to those people that if like, you're doing that at 18, like the bar is so high for so many people and you're already there. Like, you really should appreciate that, like, that is a gift from whatever you believe in, however you got it, believe in it, but take it seriously, because like me and him can both attest. I've worked for forever to change the can I to how do I. And it has been a journey, but to be 18 and just to have that bag of skills I just can't imagine what it would be like. My life would be so much different now. And again, I say jealousy because it's the right word. I am jealous. I wish I had that. I really do. But my journey wouldn't be the same. And I say jealousy, I mean that like, I am so excited for that person, because their journey is going to be magical. They are going to do things that are going to be like way past our lifetime. Like, there will be pictures in history books that they painted. like, because they're that good. And I mean, that's important to me. And I'm not saying that might not happen for you or might not happen for me, but I'm willing to put like paychecks.
I hope I'm not in history books. I hope I'm just on walls. And
well, yeah, I hope I just exist on the side. My name doesn't even need to be tied to it, but like, I hope that Ben understands that like that level of work is like, it's so high tier that like, that's that 1 in 10 billion that I'm talking about. Like they're out there, but like, you gotta really put the spotlight on those people, because like, if you don't hone that craft and you don't like, it won't grow, you know what I mean? And like that 1 in a 10 billion, it just falls off because it didn't get the inspiration and the care and love that it deserved. And like, I say that about me, that like, and I'm not blaming anybody, this isn't a poke at anybody. I feel like if like I had met some magical mentor when I was 15 that saw that I had some creative ability and like put some time and effort into it, it would have exponentially boosted my career. That's not a dig. That's not that I'm upset that somebody didn't do that, but like, I want to be that person for people like Ben. I want to inspire, even if I'm not that person, I want to inspire other people to be that person, to be there for those artists, because it's a tough journey, man. But we got to have those people. This place would look terrible if we didn't have artists. It would be abysmal. I love seeing your stuff everywhere.
Supporting artists is like, it's huge, man.
You have to. You know, it's a crazy world right now with AI and like all this stuff going on. But like, if you can support an artist in any way possible, even to facilitate them creating, do it. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help you. It's going to be a great experience. Everyone's going to benefit. Just do it. It'll be so worth it. Do you have any big projects, any plans, anything that you're working on this year that you would like people to know about?
Oh, heck yeah. This is a big year for me. I got the Spring Arts Walk. That I'm just going to have cards and stuff that I've been working on. That's pretty fine. But the Gilchrist Gallery, I had my first solo-ish big show at the Gilchrist Gallery. A lot of space. I've been, paying for the last year and a half, getting together a lot of stuff. I think I have like 40 to 45 pieces, watercolor, acrylic, printmaking, which I just got into, and that's all going to be there. And so that's going to be really fun, because part of that is just kind of exploring how, we value beauty and worth in the natural world, and then how through an artistic lens we can like explore those connections. So like using all these different mediums and, kind of how they're displayed. And each room is kind of going to have a different kind of feel to it.
Cool.
So that's really exciting. And then I'm going to keep doing more street art this summer for sure. I got a couple people. I'm talking with a couple people about doing like walls for them.
That'd be very cool. I look forward to that.
Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, I got a few things in mind for the summer. I'm going to do an art walk with a lot of my street art on the CNO on May 16th, and actually like walk everyone through, and there's like 12 or 15 pieces that people are gonna be able to see. So that'll be nice too.
Very
have
cool.
people be able to see them, and then kind of get their intake too, because I've never done something like that. So this will actually give me a chance to actually ask people like gauge which ones they like.
Yeah, what's good and what's not. Yeah,
and maybe like places where people think that they'd look good, because I haven't had the ability, like usually when I'm painting, I haven't like asked someone, do you know any place that this like other walls that it would look good.
Sure.
So, and maybe some of them would be public where they just know like under a bridge somewhere that look fine, or maybe they have part of their wall in front of their house that they own that they can paint. But that'd be exciting to see how that goes, and maybe branch out.
Very cool. And we'll have details in the description down below with all the events. If you did get here in a pretty short period of time, if you're here from the future, sorry you missed us, but we'll definitely be doing some more stuff. I'll make sure we have all the socials in the description, like I said, so you can find Logan and all his stuff as well. And that brings us to my last question. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the people? I know you're a conservationist and you have a lot of good points to push. Is there anything while you got the limelight that you want to say to the people?
Never take for granted how many crazy species of plants, birds, insects, mammals that we share the world with. There's over 12,000 birds we've discovered. Probably 18,000 exist. So there's 6,000 birds predicted that we haven't even cataloged yet. And each of those birds has evolved over hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years to do exactly what they're doing. Dance for a mate, do whatever it is. There's a bird that's evolving not to fly because it clicks its wings together so fast for the female, and that's how it attracts her. But by clicking their wings together, the ones that have evolved have been the ones that can click it together harder. And so their bones are getting heavier because that makes it a louder click.
Sure.
And by getting heavier, they're going to not be able to fly soon, and then they're going to get eaten by predators because they can't fly and they're going to go extinct. So they're actually evolving to go extinct but there's so many beautiful inner workings of evolution that are happening with all these birds. And not all of them are like that. That's a sad story, but it's a fascinating story. But so just by going, like, see these things, get a good pair of binoculars and, you know, appreciate those inner workings of the natural world that are always going on all around us, no matter where we live. And yeah, hopefully we can, you know, keep as many of them around for as long as we can.
For sure.
Yeah. And thanks for appreciating the arts. Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps us up, Logan.
Righteous.
Thanks for being on. I really
Pleasure as
appreciate you
always,
being
man.
the first guest.
Yeah.
Look forward to, like I said, maybe we'll have some ideas in the future. We'll do another interview. Guys, thanks for tuning in so much. We really appreciate you. Here in the near future, we'll be posting more stuff for Western Maryland, the tri-state area, more artists and other interviews. We appreciate you stopping in. Take care. We'll see you next time.